Sergeant Bukowski was an atypical cop for three reasons. For one thing, he wasn't Irish or even Celtic. He was Polish, second generation from the old country. Second, he'd been on the job for over a decade and still didn't seem completely beaten down by it all. Finally, Sergeant Bukowski was different, especially for big, easy cops, because he actually didn't hate seeing me walk through the precinct door. Jenkins, you brought me something sweet, yes? His accent was still pretty thick, though sometimes I thought he put it on as an act. I tossed him a bag of baguettes and sat heavily in the chair next to his desk. Smart guy. Age and bad living had taken some toll anyway, but the desk became Bukowski's permanent beat when something really ugly in the sewers took a chunk out of his left calf as he was dragging a kid out of the place. Got himself a medal and a mostly cushy job. Easy street if you don't count the constant pain and the nightmares. I'd been the one to shoot the thing in the face with a full clip, giving back the kid a chance to get away. Then good old Doc Carver set whatever it was on fire, and that was that. We hope. You need something? Back will do what he can, as usual, Jenkins. Detectives are already deep in investigation of orphanage murders and kidnappings, so I am not clear what else you might be involved in. I grinned and stole a pastry from his bag. I was wondering if you've had any extra reports or news about folks on the street going missing, or odd gatherings of homeless, or stuff like that. He gave me an odd look. It's the kind of look I've become altogether used to, sadly. How is it you always end up in the middle of our strangest stuff, Harvey? How do you even know about this? So I'm right. You could say that, yes. I've been seeing many reports of shanty people asking for help finding friends and loved ones. Entire groups out by the docks do not gather as they usually do. Even that homeless brass band everyone likes does not play down the back alleys near the French Quarter anymore. It is a very strange business, but since most of these people are not, how should I put this, important? Let's not mince words with each other, Bach. They're not important. He sighed heavily. It really was amazing to see a police officer with his history who still cared that much. Yeah, not important. Still, enough are missing now that even the mayor is wanting investigation. Ever since that business with Gospel Divine, he is not wishing chances to be taken. He winked at me at that, since he knew, as did most law enforcement, that I did them all something of a favor on that one. Now you tell me about how you get involved in all of this. Oh, you know, I hear things, here and there. No, you give now more than beignets. Fair enough. Folks I'm working with have a line on some potential bad guys, maybe pulling a kind of underground movement together. Is bad mojo stuff, is it? Mojo, Bach? And yeah, I think so. Then I will tell you what some of the detectives are thinking. There is something odd with the old freighter ship that is sitting out in the harbor for more than 2 weeks now. It refuses tugs. Its captain insists that it is waiting for something important before it can dock, and is making many people more nervous all the time. When Harbor Master sends boats out to inspect, the captain says there is possible disease on board and he should stay away. Offers to send doctors are refused. We're not called in, but there is worry. People more clever than I. He let that trail off and gave me a meaningful look. That ain't me, but I can take a hint. I shook his hand firmly and made for the door. Harvey, don't sell you short. You always know where to buy the best beignets. What's next? Well, sounds like it's time to get a boat. The artwork is so good in this. It all came down to that freighter out in the harbor. I'm not a big fan of coincidences in the best of circumstances, and this certainly wasn't even a moderately bad circumstance. It was a truly awful circumstance, if you really want to know how I felt about it. I was craving back alley beatdowns by loan shark thugs by this point. I wasn't buying the whole diseased ship thing. Most captains would make for port, damn the consequences, get the doctors, get the cargo unloaded. The fact that he'd claimed to be waiting for something that insisted there was disease on board smelled entirely of throwing whatever excuse he could to see what would work. I'd done it enough times to recognize the technique. Then there was the added matter of that last little tidbit I'd picked up as I made my way back to the docks. It had to do with the registry of the freighter. Something that stuck in the part of my brain that still held on to all of that learning my mother forced on me. Italian. Port of origin. Genoa. According to the stories, and Richard for that matter, that's where Nicholas, Children's Crusade, collapsed when he failed to part the sea for them so they could walk all Israelite-like to the promised land. Whatever was going on in my town, that ship was at the heart of it, which meant we were going to have to get out there. Fortunately, I had a few friends who fulfilled two qualifications. They owned boats, and they owed me favors. Of course, with calling in favors that involved the likely source of a man's livelihood, there were the inevitable questions, evasions, and risks of secrets revealed, which naturally left the other option. So stealing a boat doesn't seem like it would be all that hard. Nah, need someone who can drive the thing. I can always lie as usual. I mean, I'm sure Richard could drive a boat. But, yeah, having someone that can actually pilot the boat properly feels like you could sneak up to the freighter a lot easier and quieter. So, let's lie. Gills McGill was the kind of guy you spent as little time around as possible. He stank, he swore every other word, and he didn't respect his own mother, much less anyone else. Man knew his way around boats, and he knew something about getting around with them quietly. Smuggling was more than a job for Gills. It was a way of life. I got him out of a one-way ticket to prison by proving him innocent on the one case they charged him with where he was actually not guilty. It made enemies of the Capazzi family for me, but it meant Gills owed me pretty big, and it was time to collect. He apparently had a patent scientist for a friend, or maybe the guy owed him favors. Gills just didn't make friends all that easy, because that boat of his, Made almost no noise at all, even with all that engine power moving it along. Didn't take long for us to get close to the freighter. There were only a few lights on the deck. As we closed in, we caught glimpses of light through the portals, though it seemed most of those were shuttered or curtained. It was a fairly bright night, but dark enough that we still had a decent chance for surprise. Gil slid us quietly up to the side. We grabbed onto cargo nets hanging down and started the long climb up to the deck. Gills pulled off. He'd watch from a safe distance and come back to get us when it was pretty clear everything was over. I was fairly certain he would, since he wasn't actually getting any money for his troubles until I got back on dry ground. We got to the railing and climbed over, miraculously still undiscovered, even though there were a handful of fairly meaty-looking guys with guns and clubs wandering around and keeping an eye out. Fortunately for us, they all seemed to have more muscle than brains and really didn't expect anyone. Richard pulled me close and whispered directly into my ear. "I'll handle this lot and find Nicholas. You go find the children." I feel like he could handle himself. I also feel like this is going to be a skills check for me. If I separate, and then I'm going to have to do a skills check of shooting somebody. So, fingers crossed. Let's see how this goes. You got it. Good luck. He headed towards the front area where the bulk of the guards were wandering around. My guess is he was going to become a distraction eventually, trying to call out this Nicholas character and deal with him. I made my way towards the back, aft, I think they call it, looking for any kind of door to get inside where I could find some stairs down. I found a door by running smack into it as it opened. My beak hit it first, knocking stars into my eyes and staggering me back, even as two thugs stepped out laughing. "You should know better than to walk right up to a door like that, pal. You must be one of the new." The guy talking, not as tall as his companion, but thick and hard, stopped short as he realized I wasn't dressed right for the part of recently recruited homeless guy. His larger friend was surprisingly quick on the uptake. Most bigger friends tend to be the dumb ones. I think it's some sort of rule of henchmen or something like that. "He's not one of the Crusaders, Philo." Philo? People actually have that name? "We must snag him and take him to that Nicholas guy, Captain's orders." I was still rubbing my nose as the two closed in. My hand closed into a fist and I threw a quick jab at Philo. Veteran of dockside bar brawls as he was, he threw a decent block and shifted to one side, which was exactly my plan. I slipped in between the two and shot a vicious kick at bigger friend's kneecap. Oh, that sounds painful. He was clearly the thicker of the two, not the fighter, and he staggered with an anguished cry as my hard-soled shoe did a number on his patella. "I've dislocated my knees. It is so painful. No, thank you." And down he went. Philo went for the arms around the waist grab, and he was fast enough to get those pythons around my chest. Fortunately for me, I've got a decent chest size, so he wasn't able to lock his grip before I flexed hard and threw him. I flung an elbow back, which caught the top of his skull. He really was pretty short. With a solid crack, my forearm went slightly numb, but so did his whole head as he hit the deck hard. And down he went. bigger friend had managed to get back to his feet, more or less, hobbled on one good leg, do the other knee. I moved to him, but he threw his hands up in appeasement. Not worth it. You're right. That pain's not worth it. He managed to gasp through the pain. I ain't likely to walk right for the rest of my life, thanks to you, jerk. I ain't getting anything worse out of this. I held up, still on guard, but willing to let the fight end there. He stared hate right at me, and I actually felt kind of bad. After all, he was right. Most folks couldn't afford doctors good enough to handle an injury like that. Which gave me an idea. Look, buddy, you know there's bad stuff happening here, and you know I am here to put an end to it. You tell me where the kids are and how to get them with the least amount of trouble, I can get you a doctor who's actually pretty good at fixing injuries like that. He owes me a favor, so I can get it taken care of so you won't be a pauper for the rest of your days. This one really was a thinker, and I could see the gears turning. You get me a job on another ship? Yeah, sure, I'll throw that in. And not time with the cops either. You know they'll eventually be all over this. That seemed to do the trick. I assumed that disease ruse wouldn't work for too much longer anyway. Yeah, any guy who uses the word ruse has a few more brain parts working than the usual crewmate on a ship full of thugs. Thanks to Arthur, that was Bigger Friend's real name, I had him stash himself in a lifeboat until it was all over, and gave him my spare flask of bourbon to help ease the pain and pass the time. I found my way down into the part of the freighter's hold where the kids were being held. What are they doing with the kids? That is an interesting staff. According to him, they were all under some kind of mass hypnosis. Though they were locked into a hold, none of them seemed to mind very much. They kept asking about when the crusade would begin, saying they were anxious to claim the new world in the name of the Lord under St. Nicholas. Creepy, to say the least. I had one more run-in on the way, but a pistol in the nostril took the fight out of him pretty fast, and he quietly let me tie him up in a closet with a gag in his mouth. I hoped I'd remember to let him out when it was all over. Though I didn't have time to get the full story from Arthur. I got the basics down at least. Nicholas showed up in Genoa with a lot of gold and diamonds, buying the ship and crew pretty much outright. They had a bit of cargo on board for legitimacy's sake, but the real plan was to use the thing as a floating base for launching Nicholas's new crusade. Most of the crew believed the man was simply crazy, filthy rich eccentric. It wasn't until they arrived outside of New Orleans that things got significantly weirder and more troubling. By that point, apparently the money was too good for most, and those that had anything to say about what was happening found themselves either changing their minds or joining the crusade, or dead. I found myself in the hallway where the door to the kids' quarters was, and sure enough, there were 3 people in robes. 2 sizable men wore brown robes like a friar or monk in a monastery, complete with those ropes for belts. One had a pole of some kind, maybe a quarterstaff. The other actually had a short sword strapped at his side. The third figure was a woman. Her robes were red, diaphanous, and left not much to the imagination. She was apparently enjoying their leering attentions, though not too much. She had some kind of odd stick in her hand, with a tiny skull on the end, scepter. I did not like the looks of where this was headed. I also didn't like how there seemed to be no way around the three of them without a fight. 6 bullets, 3 people, skill check. Run the bluff. Maybe not everyone dies. Considering where this looks like it's going, probably killing him is the best option. Can't really talk down crazy. Depending on the crazy. Like, people would call a mental illness crazy. Those that don't quite understand that mental illness is a real thing. It is scientifically proven mental illnesses exist, but back when we didn't have that information, people were just called crazy and locked away or left to be homeless because they didn't want to deal with them. Because there was no kind of treatment back then. But today, there are more resources out there to help people that have mental disabilities. That word really crazy shouldn't be used anymore, in my opinion. Okay, 6 bullets, 3 people, skill check. Run the bluff, maybe not everyone dies. Well, bullets would make noise and bring more people out. So that might not be the good idea. But doing the skill check earlier was really good. It ended well. Well, sort of. I still ended up with razor claws going down my back, but let's see. Can I save? I don't think there's... No, the bar is gone. I cannot save. Okay, never mind. Well, if I die, I guess I'm just gonna be skipping through a lot of dialogue and trying this again. I stepped out and fired at the woman, without a word. Not the most honorable thing to do, but I'm no Richard the Lionheart either. Blam. Blam. One of the shots clipped the guy behind her, and the other lodged into the wall to her left. Damn. She quickly recovered from her shock and began to cast a spell at me. I've been around Mama Bonte enough to know when someone is casting a spell, and also know that it usually isn't something nice. Meanwhile, her loyal followers rushed ahead and blocked my next few shots. Blam. Blam. That's 4 shots. At this range, it was like shooting fish in a barrel. I just had to shoot faster than they could run. Fortunately, that wasn't a problem. At least, it wasn't a problem until someone turned the lights out on me. I don't mean the actual lights, but suddenly I could see only black. Damn witch. Hey now. Blam. That's 5. 6. Blam. Click. Intense pain like I had never felt before erupted all across my skin. I couldn't see anything, but I'm pretty sure I was on fire now. Damn witch. I thought that last part. All that came out was a scream. I wanted to tell you that I was tough in those last moments and that I didn't cry out like a frightened cat, but I can't lie. It was a horrible way to go, and it lasted far longer than I ever imagined it would. Blind and burning in a hold of ship. Worst part was knowing that I failed those kids. Hey, you win some, you lose some. Roll credits. Return to earlier choice. You have died. This was either due to a poor choice or because you failed a skill check. Yes. You can attempt a new skill check by replaying the adventure or reloading just before the choice, but not by going back through other means. Where to? Well, I'll return to an earlier choice. Hopefully there was a save. Oh, okay. It wouldn't let me save right before. were during the choice. These weren't an option. Alright, here we go again. 2 guys, 1 girl. Run the bluff, maybe not everyone dies. Richard and I had agreed to try and avoid killing anyone we didn't have to. He was afraid most of the folks under Nicholas's were either here unwillingly or somehow under his sway. I don't remember that conversation. The legends told of him having a power to influence people, even as a kid. How else do you get thousands of people to follow you across one of the most dangerous stretches of land in Europe when you're nothing but the son of a shepherd? I was going to go out on a limb and guess the woman was probably on her own time, perhaps even responsible for a lot of what was going on. She just had that cultist with a magic stick, kill people for power look about her. Call me biased. I shall call you biased. The 2 thugs may well have been patsies, so whatever I did, I was going to need to at least try and give them a chance to come out of this still breathing. I figured I'd go with old Plan D. Freeze! No one move. I'm Detective Donovan, New Orleans PD. My men are on their way down now. Drop your weapons and get your hands in the air. In one hand, my private credentials, which had a shield that might fool anyone not from around here. In the other, the Colt Peacemaker. Not very convincing as a cop's piece, but it had the advantage of being pointed right at them, even if they didn't buy the ruse. There was that word again. I had to stop myself from laughing at it. It hit me. Serious police detectives don't laugh to themselves as they are pretending dozens of flatfoots are on their way down for backup. The 2 guys actually bought it. The one with the stick dropped it, and the other started unbuckling the sword awkwardly from his rope belt. The woman, however, laughed at me. As she did, both guys froze, clearly not sure what to do. Yeah, not good if the lady's laughing. You think I don't see what you really are, Marked One? I don't know which demon claimed you, nor how you unbound yourself, but we can. Then, bam! You can only go through mystical threats to your life so many times before you figure out to start shooting before the crazies stop talking. She'd been about to lower the skull rod at me as she wrapped up, so I pulled the trigger. That was smart, considering what the death ending was. I'm guessing she thought she had some kind of magical ward against regular bullets, mostly from the look of disbelieving shock as she slumped to the floor, blood flowing from her chest. Sword Guy changed his tune from sweet surrender to kill that guy in a hurry as he drew and charged me. I got all stupid and tried to shoot the sword out of his hand, like I was really worried about disappointing Richard or something. Naturally, I missed, and ran out of time for a 3rd shot before he was on me. Thankfully, he was all bluster and moving pictures with his swordplay, no training at all. Not like I'd had any either, but I knew enough about combat to know he didn't know much of anything about it. Meanwhile, Staff Guy had picked up his pole and was maneuvering for an opening to whack me. That's when I got clever. I shifted to the left, causing Sword Guy to shift with me, which left Staff Guy the opening he was hoping for. As he went for the baseball bat swing, I raised my gun at his face. I didn't really have a good shot, but I didn't need one. All I needed was for him to flinch at the right moment. Crack! Down went Sword Guy as the staff smacked him right in the temple. Staff Guy was so mortified he barely saw the pistol butt, for it smacked him right between the eyes and laid him out too. Smart. Nice. I checked them both, and their pulses were still good. Then I checked the witch lady, because you never know. Ever assume they're dead without checking. If she wasn't, she at least wasn't getting back up anytime soon, and not without some major repair work on that mess that was once her heart. Still, I didn't like taking chances, so I kicked that rod thing of hers far away from her, then yanked a couple of necklaces off from around her neck just to make myself feel better. Hanging around Mama Bonthe's taught me more than a couple of things. Yeah, protective charms, protective shields, spells that she could have had on her, and considering this is fiction, she could still use her spirit to do one last spell at him because it's still technically in her hand of her mortal being. So you never know. Better safe than sorry, and not blind and burning to death. Thinking of her at the moment caused me to finger the amulet hung around my own neck, tucked down under my shirt. Yeah, I decided keeping that little charm for the gospel mess was probably a good idea. Sword guy had some keys on him, so I grabbed those up and made for the door they were guarding. Opened it up, and there they were. Dozens of kids, ranging from toddlers to mid-teens, all crowded near the back of the room. The older ones were clearly trying to care for and protect the younger ones. They had eating utensils and chairs in their hands, mostly. It was clear the room had been set up like a kind of open space dormitory, with pallets and bunks along the sides and tables and chairs in the middle. Someone had even engineered a bathroom off to one corner, running the interior pipes necessarily for toilets and showers. As I moved inside the hold, I noted there was room for 10 times as many people in here as there were currently occupants. You see it, yes? It is but the beginning, my friend. How I keep letting people walk up behind me like that, I don't know. It only happens when I'm dealing with ancient horrors and supernatural weirdos, true, but that happens to me a lot more than I like these days. He was on the small side, lean and wiry. He was wearing black armor, very goth-looking from what I knew, with a pretty wicked-looking sword he was wielding with both hands. Oh, great, more henchmen. He had 2 guys with him, one on either side. Both were beefier, wearing armor that wasn't quite as impressive, and also armed. One with sword and shield, the other with a great big axe. I was really starting to feel like I wandered into a Grimm's fairy tale now. Not the nice, cleaned-up kind for kids, mind you. The old, bloody, really scary stuff they actually wrote. Yeah, if you've read the original Snow White and Cinderella and Rapunzel, they're pretty brutal. I do recommend them, seeing how they were originally written from actual storytellers from those regions that the Brothers Grimm had traveled to. It's pretty cool. But those stories have come a very, very long way to the Disney versions we have today. The 2 bigger guys split off from one talking, one to each side, clearly aiming to flank me. He just stood there in the doorway, smiling with a mouthful of surprisingly decent teeth, considering when he apparently came from. Meanwhile, I could hear a lot of kids whispering Nicholas and Saint Nicholas, and he will protect us. I was pretty sure they weren't referring to me as the one doing the protecting. Funny thing is, I was starting to understand why. Should probably play for time. I'm often identified as having what you might call problems with authority. Somebody tries to push me, I push back. They try to tug me in a particular direction, I tend to want to go the other way. The more I looked at this Nicholas guy, the more I heard him talk, the more I started thinking I wanted to go his direction, wherever that was. As you can hear the children calling me, my name is Nicholas. What is yours, sir? That voice was velvet and honey, sliding right into my ears and down my spine. He was full of class and charm, and he had a way about him that just made me want to pay attention to every word. Something about that. I'm Harvey Jenkins. And why are you here, Harvey? What do you seek? I was vaguely aware of the two other guys still circling around me, and I could still hear the kids in the background whispering his name, but my entire world seemed narrowed to the line of space between me and Nicholas. He stepped towards me, slowly, casually, that smile of his fixing me right in place. There was something all too familiar about all of this, though for the life of me I couldn't imagine what or why. I'm, here for the kids, to save them. As you can see, mein friend, they are in no danger here, and in no need of saving. It is I, in fact, who have saved them. They are with me because they needed a home, and I gave them one, and they needed a family, and I have created one for them. Made sense, really. Orphans have no families, no homes. Why not let them stay with this guy, who could give them both? I was starting to really wonder what in the hell I was doing here. Why I was bothering this guy. Oh no, I should have done the other one. Why am I always bugging people, getting involved in their affairs and bringing them into trouble, like I did to that nice preacher guy at Gospel? No, Divine was terrible. I do not like having my mind messed with, especially by magic. The amulet felt hot on my chest. I reached up, casually, like I was scratching an itch. I could feel it through my jacket and shirt. Thing is, apparently that was enough to draw his attention to it, as well hidden as it was. His eyes narrowed, and he started walking very fast to close the distance with me, stretching out a hand. I raised the pistol to fire, but with a wave he caused some kind of force or wind or something to knock me off my aim, and the shot went wild. Oh, he creepy. He was on me, then, one hand holding my right wrist where the gun was, and the other reaching for my chest where the amulet was. I could hear the other guys closing in, though not all that quickly, since he seemed to have me under control. He was strong, way stronger than he looked. He was also grotesquely ugly. Somehow his close, whatever it was that made me see such an angelic face, was gone. Now I was looking at the face of a corpse that had no business looking that angry and mobile. Oh no! A quick glance at the other guys revealed that they too were basically the Walking Dead of some kind. Keeping that amulet was a good idea. It meant I was going to see just how horrible these guys were that were going to kill me. Oh great, that's what you want to see. Blam. Wait a minute, how many shots has he done now? He did one shot at that guy. He's done 2 shots here, so is that 3 shots done? Or did I miscount somewhere? For once, the noise didn't come from me. Black ooze and things I didn't want to think about spilled out onto me as Nicholas, the walking corpse, slumped and became literal dead weight on me. I shoved him off and stood up, still a bit shaky from the apparent battle in my head. I didn't have much time to recover, though, as the guy with the sword and shield was charging me. Axeman was running at Richard, and the source of the shot, naturally, who was holstering his pistol and squaring off for a nice melee. Idiot. Somehow I didn't let go of the pistol I'd had, so I scooted out of the way fast as my guy charged right into the space I was in. He skidded to a stop, fortunately not all that accustomed to the flooring in here, and I edged my way towards a big picnic table to put it between us. He stalked me, what was left of his face grinning at the prospect of cutting me up. He didn't seem all that broken up about Nicholas lying on the deck, though the kids were hysterical. There were screams and cries, and a bunch of them ran forward and surrounded the body of their precious St. Nicholas. Steel rang on steel as Richard and Axeman went at it like bulls riled up for the same cow. Richard, you want to stop messing around with that Viking and help me out here? A grotesque chuckle bubbled out of what passed from mouth on my guy. Apparently he still had enough throat left to make with a talking. Sir Gunther and the Lionheart have history. You will not get any help here, non-believer. Gunther and I, Sir Baron, are faithful servants of the Lord God, and we will bathe these lands in the blood of the wicked. When the new world is ours, Nicholas promises we will again retake the Holy Land, where we may at last lay down our burdens and gain our final reward. We'd continued our dance around the table mostly because I didn't have a better idea. Suddenly the kids around Nicholas' body gasped, then cheered. Slowly he stood up, and even though I'd broken whatever spell he'd had on me at first, he still didn't look too bad for a corpse. In fact, I wondered if I'd seen what I thought. Baron took very clever advantage of my distraction, leaping up onto the table and charging at me. Years of fighting off palookas I managed to hack off at one bar or another paid off, though as I grabbed the edge of the table and flipped it. Baron simply didn't get how unsteady picnic tables are, and he paid for it by flying and landing hard. His sword clattered out of his hand and landed near me. Pistol was a few feet farther away. Well, the gun didn't seem to kill him, and said the gun was a little further away. Oh great, this is a death one too, because there's no save. Okay, grab the blade. I like moving pictures, what few of them I'd seen. I guess the kid in me still loved stories about heroes and pirates with swords, buckling, swash, and jumping around. Maybe that's what got into me as I leaned over and grabbed Baron's sword. Nothing else makes that much sense in hindsight. Though he looked like a walking corpse, apparently whatever Baron was still needed to breathe, because he was struggling like a man who'd had the wind knocked out of him. I ran forward and hit my knees, and let the momentum and the slick floor carry me forward as I grabbed the hilt with both hands and held it steady. He looked just in time, and there was genuine horror in those eyes. I almost felt bad for him, except for that whole planning to kill me thing. Nah, I didn't even almost feel bad. He had it coming. Luck or something was with me, 'cause I got it almost perfect. Sword hit neck, head went flying. Before it even hit the ground, the skull went pretty much to dust and bone fragments, and the body did the same as it slumped over. Huh? Worked better than I imagined. Oh, he's angry again. More screams and cries came from around Nicholas, and once again I could see he looked like something that should have stayed in the ground. The kids backed away in horror or ran screaming to the back of the room. And there was this kind of flickering effect, like two different images in the same picture. I was guessing whatever he had to mask his ugly side was on the fritz, from where Richard had shot him with the magic peacemaker. Speaking of Richard, he and Gunther were still going at it, yelling at each other in German from what I could tell. They really seemed to hate each other, and it was clear Nicholas was my problem for the moment. Except that he decided he was going to be no one's problem as he staggered for the door. This is far from over. North. I will go north, where they have cities every bit as corrupt, and I shall start again. Yeah, that seemed like a bad idea. Great. Another no save one. Okay, I feel like Richard would be upset at me if I stopped and helped him and let Nicholas get away, so let's go after Nicholas. Richard, Go, Jenkins. Sir Gunther and I must finish this. He feels I betrayed him, and perhaps I did. The trial of arms shall attest. Gunther spouted off something more in German and swung wildly, which Richard barely managed to block. The kids were all starting to scream or cry or ask questions, and I could tell most of them were wondering just why they were standing around inside the belly of this freighter, watching a couple of guys from a fairy tale go at it. I ducked out the door and followed the trail of blackened blood that Nicholas was leaving wherever he went. Richard's blessed pistol hadn't killed him, but it sure had left a mark. I made my way up those stairs and then into some kind of widened hall or room where there was a bunch of bodies. No, not bodies in the dead sense. One was groaning and the others were clearly breathing. Richard must have been through here and taken them all down in that non-lethal way we agreed to. The trail led on through a door in the opposite side, so I rushed through it, Baron's sword still in my hand. I ran down a much thinner wall and jumped over what I thought was another unconscious man, but he reached up and tugged at my slacks just as I cleared over him. I nearly cut his hand off as I swung around. Hey, easy, pal. I just want to know what I'm doing here. Where are we? Hell, buddy, I'm not even sure anymore. Go into that room and wait, though. That's likely your safest bet. I continued down the hall and found another set of stairs going up. I figured we were getting close to the top deck now, and I was in a hurry to catch this nightmare thing before he got loose in my city. The door was wide open, but a sudden chill in my spine slowed me up at the last moment. Times like these, instinct takes over. This seems like a good place for a trap. I better wait up. Dive, dive, dive. Guns blazing full steam ahead. Definitely not guns blazing full steam ahead. I don't have a gun on me. I got a sword. Let's see. Oh look, I can save here. Save. There we go. Return. The problem is, if I wait, will he get away? Or will Richard catch up with me? Is that a good thing? Or should I just dive like something's coming at me? Maybe I should dive, because my hair's prickling up. Brains win over brawn every time. Nicholas's huge blade slammed right into the door frame where my head would have been. I ducked and rolled, barely managing to not cut myself wide open with the stupid sword I was carrying. He pressed the attack quickly, and I had to scramble backwards as I got my feet under me. I will not be denied my destiny again, you worm. These lands will bathe in the blood of all who do not follow me, and when the rest are under my banner, with the children at the lead, I shall march through the gates of Jerusalem, and I shall rule the world. He swung wild, angrily, and I managed to keep Byrne's sword in front of me and in the way of his blade. For all that he looked impressed and wore fancy armor, he didn't seem all that skilled with the blade. Why would he be? Come to think of it, he was a shepherd's son, a shepherd himself. His entire children's crusade was about just marching a bunch of non-combatants to the Holy Lands and letting God take care of the rest. Yeah, that's not how that works. He wasn't skilled, but he was strong, and he was fast, and I was already pretty beat up and tired. I had to find a way to finish this fast. They say every successful PI is at least a quarter psychologist. I say, whatever works. Hey, Nikki, you got it all wrong. We don't have to fight. I could help you reach the promised land. Something of the lost boy with the delusional hopes appeared in his eyes for just a moment. Help me? You could? Help me finally find my rest? He was frozen still in that moment, looking at me, pleading, so I did what came naturally. Cut his damn head off. Think it was starting to become a habit. That was just so blunt. That was funny. Head and body hit the deck, though there wasn't that whole dust thing happening like it did with Baron. That worried me. What worried me more was when the body started moving just a few seconds later. There I was, arms trembling, legs all wobbly, wondering how much energy I had left to even stand. The body was starting to crawl for the head. Nope, kick that head away, do a soccer move. Then the eyes on the head opened, and Nicholas started talking, and I was ready to just dive overboard and find another city to live in. I don't blame you. That was a naughty, naughty trick you played, Harvey. Now I'm going to have to show you what happens to those who get in my way of my holy destiny. And then there were arrows. Well, crossbow bolts to be more precise. 3 of them slammed into the body, pinning it to the ship's deck, and Nicholas's head started screaming. One of the 3 shooters walked over, picked up Nicholas's giant 2-handed blade, and gave me a rather quirky smile. The trick, Mr. Jenkins, is to use the blade of the creature on itself. Ah, that's why that worked on Baron. Okay. Nicholas's head was in a real panic now. His body, it seemed, was mostly just in pain as it writhed around on the deck of the ship, unable to break free of the bolts. You cannot do this. You are of the church. The Pope welcomed us, gave us shelter. You understand our divine mission. He wished us well. With a sound not unlike someone cutting an apple in half. Oh gosh, it's gross. One of the sons of James destroyed Nicholas the Butcher's head with his own blade, while his 2 companions looked on with their crossbows already reloaded. A man in ornate church robes was there as well, further back and still remaining in the shadows, Smiley went on. Revenants, you see, of a particular type. They bond with the weapon they died holding, and that is the only thing that can actually kill them. I looked at Baron's sword. That explained a lot, actually. Unfortunately, it also meant Richard was in a lot of trouble unless he knew the trick. Of course, with these guys on board, he was in a lot of trouble anyway. I turned to face the door I'd come out of, hoping I'd be able to make it before they shot me with those crossbows. When out stumbled Richard, with his sword in one hand and Gunther's axe in another. He'd figured out the trick. Let him go with them? Nuts to that. I don't see why not. He's doing nothing but good, unlike the other guy that was trying to kill everybody. Oh, no save point. Let him go. Sorry I spoiled your fun with Nicholas, Richard, but you were a bit busy. He grinned somewhat at that, then stared at the demolished head. All is well, Harvey. What needed to be done is done, all around. Gunther once followed me, you see, and he felt my rejection of our crusade in my later years was a dread insult and betrayal to all who had followed me. In a sense, he was correct, and only by our duel was the matter to be satisfied. He looked down at the deck and just sighed heavily. He is satisfied now. Fancy Robe spoke up. Richard Coeur de Lion, you are hereby mandated by the order of the Sons of St. James, and ministers of his Holy Inquisition, to surrender yourself. You will be bound and delivered to the Holy See, where you will be examined, exercised, and put to death as deemed necessary by church proclamation. May God have mercy on your soul. Aw, I thought it meant he would be able to go free, not him going with these crazies. Richard didn't even look up. He let Gunther's axe drop to the deck, then went to sheathe his sword. He was just going to give up and go with them. No more fighting, no more death and blood. Richard, are you sure about this? All I am sure of, friend, Harvey, is that there is no more fight left in me tonight. If God wishes me to find atonement at the hands of the Church's special inquisitors, perhaps that is my final path to peace, after all. I didn't know what to say or what to do. This was all above my head, and I didn't think it was my place to tell a man how to walk the road with his maker. Apparently others thought it was their place, though, as a dozen or more people suddenly started coming out onto the deck, flowing in from both gangways on either side of the freighter. Some wore priest collars and some wore yarmulkes. All of them had shotguns or clubs or some other form of personal destruction. Richard Lowenhartz, you may think your fight is over, but mine's just beginning. Rabbi Saul had a handful of his folks on hand, coming up to stand around me and Richard. Meanwhile, Bishop Brian McClarty and a bunch of his folks moved to stand between Fancy Robes and the two guys with crossbows and us. McClarty piped in. Cardinal Verona, I would be most grateful if you and your men would withdraw and return to the Vatican at your earliest convenience. I've determined your actions present a significant risk to the safety and spiritual well-being of my diocese, and I am exercising my rights and obligations as head of this district of our holy church. Smiley looked at me strangely, and his grin returned. He gave me the barest of nods, then spared one for Richard as he lowered the huge blade and stepped slowly away. The cardinal stiffened quite a bit, for the first time clearly unnerved and revealing he didn't have total control of the situation. Bishop McLarty, you will be stripped of your rank, your rights, and your place in the church. You face excommunication at the very least for this affront. Saul wasn't done for the night, apparently. I don't think so, Cardinal. See, it's a new world we live in. What with radios and telephones and telegraphs and all, people can talk long distances pretty quickly these days. And me and mine, we got friends everywhere. Not everyone hates Jews, you know. And there's even some of your people who do business with us. Big business with banks and real estate and everything. Secret cabals of holy assassins ain't good for business, especially when they become not so secret. Suddenly there was the distinctive pop, 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 and blinding staccato of flashes as cameras went off from numerous angles. Saul and Brian had brought photographers. The cardinal and his men all had looks of utter panic on their faces. Well, all except Smiley. He had that serene look of a man who realized everything had just changed, and he might as well accept it. You and yours take one little bit of action against my colleague Bishop McLarty, or against Mr. Jenkins here, and every newspaper from here through Europe gets one hell of a story, complete with pictures. I got it on good authority that the boys at the Vatican wouldn't think that's too keen an idea. I noticed Saul didn't have a weapon in hand, though all those around him did. Like father, like son. Okay. Back out west, Saul sat down heavily at our usual table at Murphy's, 2 glasses and a fresh bottle of 4 Roses in hand. He started pouring, and I just kept listening. He headed back out west. Put him on the train myself. I think he's headed to Utah to look into some real strangeness out there. Makes sense. Lots of strange stuff happens in Utah. We both laughed at that, then sipped our drinks in companionable silence. He went on. That woman you killed, turns out she was some kind of powerful witch from somewhere deep in the Alps. We've been looking through a bunch of stuff from the ship, since the cops are still trying to wrap their heads around what really happened, and don't mind our help figuring it out. Naturally, we don't tell them too much about the spooky stuff, just painted it as a slavery thing with cultist trappings. I nodded. Makes sense. Yeah, Brian came up with that one actually. Anyways, she and her coven found Nicholas, raised him up, found some old crusaders to raise up as revenants, and sent him out on his business. She came along, apparently gathering all kind of power from whatever he was doing. He had some kind of special way about him, even in life, that got people to see him as he wanted. They wanted to follow him just because. I nodded, remembering what had happened to me when we faced off. I absently fingered the bulge of the amulet through my shirt, and Saul kindly pretended not to notice. I got a little cabal training, the kind most Jews don't like to talk much about, and I was able to figure some stuff out from her notes. I don't know what the deal was with that pistol you were using, Harv, but it's a good thing you had it. She had some magic going that made her damn near impossible to hurt. Somewhere back in my office, I locked away in the safe. Not even Mama Bonte knew about it. Lay a particular gift Richard left with me against the day I might need it again. Saul shifted gears to a topic that made him a little uncomfortable. I got worried about you and him all alone out there on that boat, not knowing what else was going on, Harv. After I broke down and talked to Brian, something I should have done right from the start, didn't want to pry, live, and learn. I knew for sure you were in maybe bigger trouble than you could handle, and it would be all my fault. Can't say as I didn't appreciate you and the good bishop bringing the cavalry, Saul, but I didn't have to go out to that boat. That was all me. He set his glass down and looked me dead in the eye, a hard look. Yes, Harv, you did have to go out there. Moment you figured there was kids on that boat, you had to go. Same as me, really. You can act like you just get by and do things for money, and you can sell that to the yokels, but don't try and con me. You got a good heart, Harvey Jenkins. Probably only reason you're still breathing, to be honest, if even half the stories about you are true. I looked at him. He had the face of a man who needed something to believe in. I was pretty certain it shouldn't be me, but I wasn't going to bust the bubble for him just now. Besides, maybe there was something to it. After all, I've done some pretty stupid things in my time, and for nowhere near enough money. I took another long sip, set down my glass, and pointed a finger just an inch away from his nose. Believe what you want, Rabbi, but don't go spreading that around. I've got a reputation to maintain. Too many people here I got any soft spots, and I'll never get a day off. He stared a little wide-eyed at my gnarled finger, then slapped it away and started laughing. The Buglers are playing at home tomorrow, and I got 2 tickets. You in? If you want to check out the role-playing game, just hop over to Pinnacle Entertainment's website. Create your own exciting adventure with the Deadlands Noir role-playing game. Play online with others using the Fantasy Group's virtual tabletop. Special thanks. Alright, that's the end. That was pretty cool. Now that one, I feel got a real solid ending. It's been so long since part 1, I don't remember there being an ending. Like, we were in Madame Bonte's place, talking with her, and then it just kind of ended. I figured it would pick up here, but maybe I'm not remembering it right. I don't know. If you know what happened in the first one and can let me know in the comments below, that would be great, because I do not remember. Alright, thank you so much for coming on this crazy challenge with me. And I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. My voice is a little sore from all the voices, so probably towards the 3/4 mark you probably heard my voice just kind of sounding a little all samey. It's because my voice really sore at this point. But I really enjoyed it. The graphics are great, the music is great, the story is written very well. Had a death scene at one point, that was great. So I really enjoyed it. I thank you all for coming on this journey with me, and I hope to see you watching in my other videos. If you'd like to support me, I will leave information in the description, and blessed be everyone.